everybody, it's Jay, it's Eric. We have just returned from Road America in Elkhart Lake. This was a great race, and we actually had like twice as many cars this time as the last time we were there 10 years ago. We're inclined to do it again.
Yeah, not only did we have a high attendance for the Sausage Fest, as we called it, we also had a block party in downtown Elkhart Lake. Our event manager, Kim, lined up the parade with Elkhart Lake, and the cars got to drive on the street from the racetrack into downtown Elkhart Lake and park by famous Siebken's Resort and Bar, where every famous race car driver in the world has drank. And we had BS inspection in downtown with judges, including myself, in our finest regalia, and the teams responded with great themes as well.
Hella Sweet Piston Liberation Front led the parade in their Mark I Jaguar. What could be more awesome than that? And we only had 2 breakdowns. Test Card F and their Rover, because of course it was, their radiator blew up. Like a bomb went off. These guys, this is awesome. They said, you know what, that's okay. We'll just take another car, go back to the track, find a radiator, and we'll just fix it on the side of the road in the rain in front of Siebken's. Well done. Somewhat less well done, Unit 32 and their Jetta. They made it to the parade just fine. It rained, and their electronics totally fried because it's a Volkswagen Jetta, and for all we know, they're still there, not doing it well.
Without further ado, let's get into the amazing themes, because there were so many. We're just here for the SR with the Road American Gladiators. This was spectacular. These guys are already legends of lemons. They came with the American Gladiators theme song, they had the tennis ball cannon, they had the singlets, they had the jousting, they had the mullets, they had the referee. Amazing. These guys are Lemons Rally winners, and they're regularly running in the Lemons iRacing League 2. These guys rule.
Hail Mary, they brought a Blue Angles, not Blue Angels, theme. And then Dunning Cruisers, they had a USAF Thunderbirds flyover.
Fly, sir, fly! Fly! Fly, sir, fly!
SMS Racing brought their Lincoln LS, and not only did they bring their LS, they also bought the only other Lincoln LS that's ever raced in Lemons. They had both of them at this race for the first time. The new one was a Live Laugh Lincoln theme with wine and so forth, and the other one was the Need for Speed BMW at Home meme. This included a great BS inspection presentation that was pulled right from the game Need for Speed, with a reenactment of the in-game cutscene and then a challenge to the judges for Class C by racing them in Need for Speed. Needless to say, they kicked my ass.
Had some great Minnesotans show up. We had Glacial Pace and their matte black hockey puck themed Audi.
Do you believe in miracles?
They kind of went from Slapshot to Miracle on Ice at this race. And Idio Racy brought literally one of the guys' grandmother's Toyota Avalon, and so they leaned into it. They had a grandmother costume. They were giving away Werther's original candies, which are delicious, by the way. And they also may or may not have lost their brakes in a spectacular fashion.
Turbo Encabulators towed their Miata out from Colorado, and they showed up to BS inspection with a giant Sargento sign stuck on the nose of their car. Why? Well, here you go. Club 991 had a burrito theme with their Honda Prelude, which eventually caught on fire a little bit. They weren't terribly concerned about it, though. And Mrs. Puff's Boating Academy has a Honda Accord wagon that used to be the shop runner where they worked. They showed up with a great hamburger re-theme on it that was awesome.
We had our first Mazda 2 at this race, and the team called it Grimace. Why did they call it Grimace?
Nothing can kill the Grimace.
The Gutless Cutlass showed up. They were rocking a great Gilligan's Island theme, but we didn't get to see a lot of it because they blew up before the parade. And we saw the return of Failed Contraception and their Firebird. It is not just a team theme, it is the life that they lead.
Scrap Bill has a Volvo S80. We've seen a million IKEA-themed Volvos, and guess what? They're all really well done. Probably better than IKEA furniture, actually. Zach Caldwell's Van and Ball Dodge Grand Caravan, got that right this time, showed up with no glass and no hash. It was the Super Leggera version of the Dodge Grand Caravan. That was hella sweet.
Ho 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 showed up with their Honda Civic. They were one of 4 teams that raced at NCM 2 weeks earlier, but more importantly, they did a Christmas theme, and it turns out, we didn't know, you know who's a huge Christmas fan? Judge Shelley. Worked out well for them.
Merry Christmas!
And super duper wonderful, hella sweet Mazda Stoffelis. They got this Turbo Miata. They always want us to give them laps so that there's like no pressure and no heartburn. This time we played bingo for the total.
We had a few themes we might need to explain for the out-of-region types. We'll start with Team Fiery Death and their Bobby Knight themed BMW. Timing on this was a little unfortunate as Bobby Knight passed away a couple weeks after this race, but they showed up with the team captain dressed as Indiana University basketball coach Bobby Knight. He was yelling at his teammates, carrying around a folding chair to throw periodically. That is a spectacular Midwestern theme. They also blew up their car and their tow vehicle on the weekend, so Bobby might have had some deserved rage, let's say. The League of Legitimate Nigerian Businessmen showed up at this race with a characteristically esoteric theme, and they came with a Brett Favre genital portrait studio and volleyball court theme directed at the headlines that had recently troubled the famous Green Bay Packers quarterback.
And we're going to take that money from needy people, and we're going to take it way over here, and we're going to build us a volleyball court.
TDI Soar Racing, they lean into the fact that Wisconsin residents call Illinois residents FIBs for Illinois bastards. And so they had the Illinois Tourism Bureau's Guide to Wisconsin.
That was a lot of themes, so really well done, everybody. We also had another amazing first. It was our first Pontiac G5 from Team Winnebago them. That's amazing. We've had almost the full set. We've had a Pontiac G8, a G6, a G5, just missing the G3.
Now, this race even brought out a lot of cars that had not raced with us for years and years, one of which was liability only. This is a Mazda 626. It has not raced in Lemons since, 2018, 2019, something like that. But in the meantime, since then, between then and this race, it has been the daily driver of the ER doctor on the team, now back on the track.
The Rambler that used to race in Lemons several years ago and in fact trotted across the entire country in 2016 returned at last after about a 6-year absence. It had been sitting getting an engine swap, which for some reason was a Ford Essex 3.8 liter V6 out of a Thunderbird. Their wiring guy was just about done with it when he came down with a ridiculous case of the flu and couldn't quite get it finished up, so they brought the car to the track to finish. Volkswagen Quantum racer Derek Steinkamp was supposed to be racing his car at this race, but it didn't turn out to be ready, so he brought his teammates with him and showed up, and they jumped into the Rambler, and there were about 9 people crawling all over on it just to get it back on the track for about 12 laps, and then it crapped out. But good to see the Rambler again. We also had 2 AMC Gremlins, which is, of course, the pride of Kenosha. We had Finger Tight with their less quick LT1 powered AMC Gremlin with bunny costumes. That was great. We also had Ironworks Racing, which is Dave Morrow's old fur-covered Gremlin that is all matted and disgusting. They've been through a whole bunch of GM engines in this thing. A Buick 3800, a Pontiac OHC6, a Pontiac 455. They finally killed all of those engines and showed up with a half-finish LS swap in it and got about 9 laps before that one packed up.
But terrible, though, and we got to be a little bit serious about this because this was a tragedy. The Onset Racing Anton Lovett built and lovingly engineered and getting to be very fast in a good race car, Volvo 544, bit it at this race. Nobody got hurt, but Chris Champion, who was a great driver, was in it. Car got a little squirrely, he caught the wall, and this fabulous car, which is one Class C, one Class B, and on its way to winning Class A, the legendary Trifecta, totaled. However, the good news is A, Chris, totally fine. B, Anton is already halfway through the build of the next 544, taking the 2 undamaged parts and starting all over again.
And we had a couple of great penalties, as we usually do. Judge Shelley, Judge Corey, and myself were on the judging panel. We brought back the old Judge Phil classic, the door prize, where you have to remove the door from your car and take it to a landmark to photograph yourself with it. Of course, we sent teams to Siebkens. And we had a game of cornhole, but we're missing the bags to throw them in, but we had a bunch of plastic sausages, so we just played cornhole with our sausages.
Okay.
This track is hard on cars, and so there was a lot of mechanical carnage, not all of it necessary. Rough Knuckle Racing, they were contending for the lead in their Miata until an over-tightened zip tie shorted out one of their spark plug wires. Why do you do that?
also self-inflicted Capri D Boys in their chop-top Chevy Caprice. We saw them a couple years ago. They blew up the original 305 in this thing, and their backup engine was an Impala LT1, 300 horsepower, gonna dominate with it, but they didn't want no stinking fuel injection, so they sold it for $500, bought a $100 small block from an 80s Chevy truck and a $400 Muncie 4-speed, and then shoehorned it all into this Caprice. How did that go? Well, on lap 1 of practice, the tail housing on their Muncie broke in half. That sucked. They drove down to Kenosha, bought another not cheap Muncie, and this one made about 6 laps before the tail housing cracked again and dumped transmission fluid everywhere. Why did this happen?
Bad news for yesterday's Autosport is they blew up their motor in the Neon. The good news is they were smart enough to bring a spare. The bad news is they were dumb enough to actually not bring the spare. They forgot and left it all the way back in Minneapolis.
Kind of hella sweet. Pyrrhic Victory's, well, maybe not hella sweet, but their front subframe fell out of the car completely and they needed another one. They discovered that there was a mecca of Ford Focuses just 20 miles away from the racetrack. That was amazing.
I would actually argue a mecca of Ford Focuses 20 miles from any point in Wisconsin. Not that amazing. Your class winners, if anybody cares, the Q45 Infinity of Silent but Deadly. I gotta just mention, Infinity people are the whiniest. Like, you say anything bad about an Infinity and you get a million emails. So this car was great. It was a Q45 in Class C. It was terrible. Class B was the E39 BMW of the Polka Kings, and overall, a Mazda RX-7. After 10 years, 2 cars, and 26 races on the same engine, they finally won overall. Oh, by the way, not a wankle, LT1.
No! Shit!
Your eBay Motors heroic fix went to Sunday Funday and their Mini Cooper. Now, these guys you may know if you're a West Coast racer because they have raced this thing in California a whole bunch, and it's always run really reliably. In fact, it's run so reliably that they towed 2,400 miles to this race without a spare engine because it had run so well. And what happened? Of course, the engine packed up on test day. So what do you do then? Well, you notice that the dudes with the really clean first race Mini are hanging out with their car running perfectly, and there's just a spare engine sitting there. You ask if you can just borrow it for a little bit. They did that. Car ran great after that. Both Minis finished. Hella sweet.
The I Got Screwed trophy went to Petrosexual. This kind of story broke my heart. They've got this Mazda Miata. They decided a 4.9 liter Cadillac motor that was going to be their ticket to domination. Weirdly, kind of worked for a little while. Not so much this time. First, in test day, totally carbooned a wall, bent the hell out of this car. By the way, let that be a warning to you. Test day, not always a good idea. They hammered, they stretched. This car was almost totaled. They were able to get back out of the track eventually. And then the motor packed up. Hey, not a problem. We'll just swap in our spare motor, also a 4.9 Cadillac. And they finally got that in, started it up, water poured right down in the oil pan, right down onto the ground. The motor was totally, I don't know why they're hauling around. It's 500 pounds of complete garbage. They were done.
We called the regional trophy here the Milwaukee's Actual Best Trophy, and it went to the Milorganite Poo Team. Now, this requires, again, some backstory. Now, what is Milwaukee known for? Sure, you got Bob Uecker and Harley Davidson, and people tend to think of the, shall we say, the heavy diet, beer, cheese, and sausage. So it's probably no surprise that like 100 years ago, Milwaukee basically invented modern sewage processing, which involves selling biosolids as bagged fertilizer, which you may know as Milorganite. That is a long, long way toward pointing out that a Milorganite-themed car is spectacular for a Wisconsin race, and even better that it was a Chrysler PT Cruiser. There you go. All of Milwaukee compressed into one solid theme and topped off with a awful PT Cruiser.
Judge's choice went to Mofoco and their Dodge Magnum. Now, the Nawrocki brothers, they brought a Pinto engine Mercedes compressor. They got a Pac-Man Focus that they run. They wanted the first Magnum, but they also wanted a mid-engine supercar. So they said, you know what, we're going to do both. Car set up with a slant 6, roughly where the passenger's feet would be. So it's a front mid-engine, which means the shifter is actually behind the driver. Minor detail. This car did not run very well, but it did run good enough.
Organizer's choice went to Buzz Off Racing, which is another American 6-cylinder swapped into a post-2000 car that we have known was coming for a while. Now, this is a BMW E46 with a Chevy 230 straight 6 and a Saginaw 3-speed manual. That is incredible. Now, why would you do this? Well, Team Captain Mark's dad and his uncle both used to race on oval tracks with the 6-cylinder class, and they had tons of these engines sitting around, and they still do. So Mark used a bunch of old custom 50-year-old intake runners and parts and slapped them all together and shoved them into a BMW. It was spectacular. There is a 2-barrel carburetor from a 67 International truck. The 230 came out of a 63 Chevy C20. There's a Kmart oil filter on it from like the 1970s. Tons of custom parts. It was incredible. The only thing that failed? The BMW power steering pump, which went out during the parade, so they had to drive it through town with no power steering, and then all weekend, just like Mark's dad did on the oval track in 1974 in a Chevy 2. That's hella sweet. They also won the Yokohama Road Mangler Cup and a set of free tires.
The Halloween meets gasoline prize, $1,000 cash to boot, went to Escape Velocity Racing. To win this prize, you gotta be on theme and you gotta be in it all weekend long, and it helps to be really wackadoo and obscure. These guys are very good at that. So they did Operation Citrus Grab. I don't even pretend to understand most of this. It was sort of an Operation Paperclip theme, and then that led to Clippy the Paperclip from the Microsoft, and then that led to this Special Ops theme that was going on all weekend, and they were kidnapping people to go on vacation. I don't know. I don't care. It was weird AF, and they were doing it. Amongst the kidnappees, by the way, Eric, he was gone for a while. We didn't know where. Kidnapped. And they raced 2 cars, one of which is a Toyota Solara that they literally pulled out of a haystack on their way from Texas to Wisconsin. Super well done.
That brings us at last to the Index of Affluency, which went to NASCAR and their Lincoln Mark 8. As fitting with 2 Cutlass Sierras and 2 AMC Gremlins, we also had 2 Mark 8s at this race, which is amazing in and of itself. Now, on paper, these cars seem like they should dominate any kind of road race. They got an SVT Cobra motor, independent rear suspension, and they're really tough cars. In reality, they just weigh a ton, the transmission sucks, and they're slow as hell. Even so, NASCAR will beat 2/3 of the field with about the 114th fastest lap. That was awesome. The car looks spectacular. They did it in style. Well done, Team NASCAR. And that'll bring us to Lemons in a Nutshell.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?